Oh man, what's going on, everybody? I wanted to do a build video, and we'll get into that in a bit. I'm gonna go do some personal training exercises here in a minute. You'll see what I mean when we go find this giant to go pick on, get him to beat up on us a little bit. I want to raise my light armor skill a bit, but wanted to tell you all a story and maybe even get into discussing a few principles about character building in general, which will pretty much be a repeat of some things maybe you've heard in some of my other videos, if you've kept up with some of my other build stuff and even my Let's Plays. But never hurts to rehash them a little bit, talk about some stuff that comes to mind when I think about, games and how I like to build my characters and develop them and stuff. And anyway, some stuff just to throw out there and take it or leave it. All right, but my story first. Okay, this clip that you're watching right here, this is the last clip that I have from my I guess I can say now, my old PS3. Okay, what happened is, some point between leaving this area right here and going back to Whiterun, my graphics card decided to burn up or something in my PS3, and I don't have the torque wrenches and all this other stuff to get into it, my particular model. And anyway, a long story short, it would have been probably more expensive to fix it than it would have just been to replace it with a refurbished one from like GameStop, which is what I went to go do. Well, as most of you are probably aware, the greatest storm of the century that was ever recorded in the history of storms ever decided to go ahead and start moving our way on Friday. And it was threatening Texas through like the whole weekend, which is where I live, okay? And, oh, by the way, hearts out to anyone in Mexico that got hit by that. I haven't heard enough reports on that to know exactly how bad it was. But from what I understand, the horror story was that the specific part of the coast that it was actually going to strike first with full force was something of a resort area surrounded by a lot of poverty, and those people are not prepared to withstand 200-mile-an-hour winds. In fact, well-developed industrial areas aren't really built to withstand 200-something-mile-an-hour winds, if you think about it. And so, yeah, I didn't sleep real well thinking about all that. If anybody had people down there or knew people that were down there and stuff, hearts out to them. I hope they made it through and stuff. Was not cool thinking about that at all. And, wow, anyway. So, yeah, my problems are absolutely, well, they aren't problems compared to that, and I totally get that. But, anyway, I had my own little storm going on with, well, just basically my life this whole weekend. It was crazy. Anyway, a big part of that was, my PS3 decides to die right then, and this is like the last clip I had saved, right? Well, as you know, some of you may know, when you get another PS3 and say you want to salvage your old hard drive with all of your stuff on it, which I did want to do because I really like my hard drive. It's one that I put in there specifically. 7,200 RPM, quick loading son of a gun. I remember one of you asked, why does my Skyrim not lag and freeze? Well, that's a big part of it, I think, is a hard drive that really speeds up my loading times just in general. And I don't have a lot of problems with Skyrim that I might otherwise have with a normal hard drive, I believe. Anyway, probably a big reason for it. Well, when you transfer it, you might as well be getting a new hard drive anyway, because you have to format it, because the new PS3 won't recognize it. And so you basically erase all your stuff. And thank goodness for cloud, because I had to erase all my saves going back a couple of videos before the one you're watching now. And basically what I had to do was, once I got it in there, into the PS3 and formatted and got it all booted up and all, everything downloaded and blah, 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 then I had to replay the game up to this point and try to retrace all of my steps, which wasn't too bad. Because of the cloud, I only had to go back to, I think it was right before we went to go meet Esbern in Delphine at, to go to the Skyhaven Temple and all that good stuff. But, interesting thing was, okay, so the storm is hitting basically on Friday. This happens like Friday night. So Saturday, I have to make my way in my little car, which is by no means an all-terrain vehicle, okay? My little Scion, I got to run up to GameStop in the threat of tropical flash flooding and all this other crap. And Houston has had its share of flooding over the last year or two. I mean, seriously. So I make my way up there, and I get a PS3 and I bring it back, and it's a trade-in, it's one that they sold, and it's supposed that they test these things, but you know how that goes. You can't catch every bug. Anyway, I go to plug this thing in, and it technically works, but it overheats in like 3 minutes, right? And the power button, it basically turns itself on and off by just looking at it. You don't even have to touch it. And it wasn't a touch button. That's the worst part. It was an actual push button on and off thing. Anyway, so I said, no. So I yanked my stuff back out, and it's kind of a pisser because, you know, you make all this prep and stuff thinking your PS3 is going to work, and it doesn't. Anyway, so I take it back up there, and I get another one, and I bring it back. And the one I have now, it has a little bug where it doesn't always want to accept the disc as readable, I guess, or doesn't want to accept it as a game actually being in there. And so you have to eject it once or twice before it'll actually register, but at least it'll play, you know. And I'm like, wow, I got 30 days to take it back again, and probably will. But after this weekend, I'm like, you know, if I can just do anything with this thing, I'll take advantage of it. Because what I'm going to have to do is pull my hard drive again, get another one, put it back in, reactivate that PS3, blah, 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 and do all this other stuff. So maybe for some future date, sometime in the next month or something. I don't know. We'll see. But as long as it's half-ass working, I can at least pick up where I left off here. And that's what I did, is I actually replayed back up to the point directly after this clip ends. We get back in Whiterun and we'll go do some stuff, and we'll talk about actual builds. Okay, so that's my story. And it wasn't just that, is there was a lot of other stormy stuff in my personal life and everything. This weekend was just a storm, not just literally, but in my life as well. It was, like I said, I don't have any problems compared to what I think some of those people along the coast of Mexico suffered. Not at all. So in light of that, I don't have anything to complain about. I'm glad I get to keep on going another day, and I'll just be content with that. But glad to be back with you guys, and glad to be able to get another video up. Anyway, so that's my story. True story, bro. It's a true story. Anyway, okay. As far as builds go, I want to discuss a couple, I guess you could say, principles or topics, some things to keep in mind. And if you just take them as a broad overview, it helps me to direct. Stay disciplined in how I'm going to build my character in any RPG. Now in Skyrim, it isn't so important because, as kind of a disclaimer, Skyrim is more like an extended action game in a lot of ways as opposed to a pure RPG. Because you essentially, when you're building a character in Skyrim, you don't really have a whole lot to think about. At least not as far as your skills or perks go. You think, you know, when you build a character, well, what do you put in your skill tree? In Skyrim, that's really not a thing. In Skyrim, it's pretty much self-explanatory. If you're going to use a two-handed weapon, put your points in the two-handed tree. I mean, whatever you want to do, put your points in that and then go do it. And then if you run out of points, we'll go do the thing in the Dragonborn DLC and get more points and then put them in something else. You know, that type of thing. And so it's basically almost infinite leveling, infinite skill points. You can eventually have your cake and eat it too, okay? But that's not the way I play Skyrim. If you'll notice, what are we? I think I'm level 50 now, about to be 51, something like that, whatever. I guess you could say soft cap, my unofficial level cap in Skyrim is usually around the 60 to 70 range, give or take, somewhere in there. I don't go to take advantage of all those extra skill points. I like not only setting certain limitations for myself, some handicaps, maybe it's equipment, like in this case or whatever, plus crank the difficulty up a little bit to make it more challenging. But I also like to work with the skill points that I have because I feel it's more of an RPG experience to have to make a choice. And what I mean by that is, you probably heard me say this in other videos, especially build videos, is when you try to be a jack of all trades and be good at everything, you wind up sucking at everything, okay? But when you pick one path, when you pick one thing to specialize in and to be good at that, you wind up being really good at that. In other words, find a role. It is a role-playing game, right? Find a role and stick to that and be really good at that. And that carries over especially into other games. I could bring up a perfect example would be Elder Scrolls Online. For any of you Skyrim players that went into Elder Scrolls trying to, you know, with that single-player RPG mentality, I'm just going to solo this, and you find out that even when you're co-oping in a dungeon, you're not living up to your end of the bargain. And believe me, if you went in thinking you were a quote-unquote tank with some quote-unquote heals and quote-unquote maybe a little DPS too, then you went into your dungeon and you hamstrung your entire group. You suffered that, and if you had a little pride, then you probably didn't want to accept the fact that possibly your complete lack of a tank build is probably what got your party wiped over and over again. Well, my healer couldn't heal me. Yeah, because your healer had to heal you twice as much as he should have because you weren't near as tanky as you needed to be because you were probably trying to be a tank, healer, paladin, DPS, assassin, rogue, Templar mage, knight, Nightblade, you know, type of thing, okay? No. Find something, be good at it, and let somebody else do their job, all right? You'll notice in this Skyrim playthrough, that's pretty much how I've been rolling. My tank has been Uthgerd. Well, now she's like as soft as a wet piece of tissue paper, poor thing. because I cursed her with Mark for Death. But anyway, up until that point, she could tank several Draugr Death Lords. That's how I had her set up. I didn't leave her with a two-handed weapon. I left her with a sword and board, so she could defend. If she does a little damage, that's great, but she doesn't have to. I'm not mad at her. If she doesn't hit anybody, I'm cool with that. Just draw their threat, draw their attention, be a tank, draw their hate, and be able to keep it long enough for me to kill them off because I'm a DPS character, right? And keeping those roles in mind, that would serve you well in any RPG you play. That would be some advice. Take it or leave it, you know. This is just my opinions, my theories, my logic, just things I'm passing along, things that have worked well for me, things that have also made the games enjoyable for me. When I'm playing a damage dealer, sure enough, I may be as squishy as some wet toilet paper, but damn it, when I hit you, that glass cannon hits hard. That glass cannon makes a big boom, you know? And so that's kind of how I like to play. Now, if you look up here, if you look at my skill trees, or I really more specifically call them perk trees, most of them are completely empty, all right? And you might remember this from my Fallout builds if you've watched any of those. You'll have heard me say this is perks, because those really aren't specifically skill trees. Those are more like perk trees, right? They're really no different than Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3, okay? Perks come in 3 categories, okay? That which allows you to kick more ass, that which allows you to get your ass kicked less, and that which is for convenience. Convenience perks are the ones I avoid like the plague. In Fallout, convenience perks would be ones that give you extra skill points because you're impatient, because you don't want to wait to level to get those skills. You want a 50 lockpick now instead of waiting till the next level to get it. So you take that one perk that gives you 5 extra points towards lockpicking and, I don't know, what, explosives or something, whatever, you know. Okay, instead of waiting, things that I can get in the game anyway, I'm not going to waste a perk point on. I'm going to put my perk points into stuff that lets me do more damage and take less damage, and that's it. All right, I'm going to avoid like the plague anything that allows me to get a little more gold out of a chest, make a lock a little bit easier to pick. No, if I can pick it, even if it takes me 20 more lock picks to pick it, I'm not going to sink any points into that. Now, if you have to put a point into a lockpick skill specifically to open a certain kind of lock period, or you can't get into it, I'm sorry, no chest is left unturned, okay? I got to have it. All right, as far as that goes, because yeah, I'm a loot whore, right? But I don't need more gold than what I can earn naturally in the game, even if it requires a little extra footwork. And that's where kind of being lazy comes in. I hate to use that word, but it's really kind of what it is when you go for convenience, it's just being lazy. It's just not being willing to work for something you could have otherwise that you don't have to spend a perk point in. All right. Now, like I say, if you have unlimited perk points, skill points to spend in Skyrim, then this isn't an issue for you. You can essentially go against the logic, go against the grain there, and be a jack of all trades in Skyrim, because they allow you to eventually do that if you play long enough, you know, and grind out your skills long enough. True enough. But the way I like to play, keeping more of a pure RPG element to it, is I have sacrifices to make, and I think you should. If you pick a role that you're going to play, you should have so many skill points to assign yourself that role. And if you try to mix and match, you're not going to have enough to make what you're doing optimal, and then do a bunch of other stuff too. Like if I put a bunch of these points that I have in one-handed and in light armor and in archery right now, if I had those sprinkled out in like conjuration and other stuff, convenient stuff, maybe a few into speech to make persuasions easier or something like that, I wouldn't be as effective, okay? As it is, I've got my points in archery as I see fit. I've got my points in one-handed, specifically the points that pertain to doing more damage with my power attacks, all right? Because the way I have my character build, and where build really does come into play in Skyrim is honestly attributes and your gear. That's where you define your build. Anyone can put points into the two-handed tree if you're using a two-handed weapon. That's a no-brainer. That's not rocket science, okay? So I know we've all seen those videos, the Skyrim videos that people put up just, well, to get views, and they get views, so they work. I'm not going to knock that. But the ones titled something like Barbaric, Uber, Vampiric, Templar, Nightblade, Assassin, Healer, DPS, Fire Mage build. Really? Okay, so you've got a dude in heavy armor that has a fire staff and runs around with a dagger and sneaks a lot, and he happens to be a vampire. Oh, okay, great, but there's no thought. There's no understanding of the combat system that goes into coming up with that build. It means having skill points and putting them into things that pertain to those skill points, and that's it. I mean, really, it's not a build. It's just putting points into them as you level up. putting points into the obvious shit. I've got a dagger. Put points into stuff that gives me more damage to daggers. I'm wearing light armor. Put points into light armor. Not rocket science, right? But where your build does come in is if you're playing, say, for example, like mine, I would call it something of a berserker build because it's heavy on health and stamina. Health because I'm, A, not heavily armored, and I would like to be able to take at least one hit when I go in there swinging both swords, big and strong, because I can't block, right? And a lot of stamina to pull off a lot of power attacks. So everything's geared towards power attacks. Now, so I put every other point into stamina and health, and that's it. Not a single point in magic. But you conjure, you use magic, that's fine. I make up for that with my gear to be able to still do what I want to do, but everything is focused on doing the things that I actually do, right? Now right here, I'm lucky to have 2 extra skill points because I want to put lightning. I've decided on both my melee weapons to put lightning because there are no dragons that are resistant to it that I'm aware of. And the only enemy that's resistant to that, I believe, is just the Storm Atronach, and that's it. So everybody should be at least susceptible to it. And then on my bow, I'm going to put lightning and fire. True enough, a fire dragon isn't affected by that, but fire is effective against everything else, right? So anyway, that's what I decided on my weapons. And we're going to try to come up with some cool names for them, too. Let's see. What are we going to name our axe here? All right, we're going straight Oblivion with this, guys. Check it out. If you remember the Oblivion game, any of you that played Oblivion, you'd pick up a Daedric weapon sometimes from one of the Dremora, and it would be this ridiculous title. Barbering Feast of Evisceration. Flesh-eating, limb-chopping, degutting of morbidity. Just some ridiculous, stupid stuff, right? Anyway, sorry. I'm just having fun with this. Also, I'm going to try to name these to where they're kind of next to each other on my hotkey list, so I can on my favorites list, so I can just kind of go back and forth between them if I need to switch out. Anyway, so just check out some of these. I don't know. I'm just being stupid. I'm just being silly here. But anyway, all right. So for a build specifically in Skyrim, attributes play a key part, and I would even go so far as to say if I played a mage, I don't know that I would sink many, if any, points into magic. Probably everything would go into just health if I had a mage build in Skyrim, and I would rely specifically on my equipment to reduce the spell costs of the particular school of magic that I chose, say destruction and maybe restoration or something. All right, and so I could maybe throw up wards, have something of a shield type thing, I don't know, maybe whatever, and then cast my fireballs and lightning and ice spikes and whatever else I'm throwing around, and make those to where they cost almost nothing, and then everything else would be to buff my magicka pool through my equipment. If you can get 50, 60 points of magicka on each piece of gear, between a ring, a necklace, and whatever, you can get your magicka pool into the 200s, maybe even 300s just off your gear. And then the rest of those enchantments, once you can dual enchant your gear, would be a reduction in a particular school, like, say, destruction, and maybe 1 or 2 reductions in restoration costs. So you can cast at least maybe, what would you say, adept level restoration spells or something, or even better, depending on what the cost is and how long how much mana it takes to hold a ward and stuff like that, and reduce those costs as much as you can. To where, imagine that, where you have a mage with pure health, you have very little need of stamina, and you can rely specifically off your health pool pretty much to stay alive, and whatever other armor upgrades you get for light armor or clothing stuff as being a mage, stuff like that, whatever else you want to apply, or you could run around in heavy armor. You can do what you want in Skyrim, bottom line. But anyway, so the principles to keep in mind is pick a path and stick to it instead of trying to be a jack of all trades. It's good practice, even though it's not necessarily necessary in Skyrim. It's still a good practice to apply. And then perks. When you have perk options, go for that which allows you to kick more ass and get your ass kicked less, unless it's a perk that specifically applies to you being able to do something specifically in the game that, that has to do with your actual gameplay, like opening chests. In here, you don't have to have lockpicking skills to even open master level chests. They're just harder to open, but you break more picks, and believe it or not, your skill actually goes up faster. the more picks that you break. Just keep a whole pocket full of lock picks at all time and break them on purpose if you want to. And you watch your lock picking skill just keep going up and up, right? That's win-win as far as I'm concerned. I don't put any points into that. So stay away from convenience perks. Work for it instead. Play the game. Don't worry so much about it. You don't have to have 10 levels now, 1,000,000 gold now and all that. You're going to get it. It's going to happen. It's not a big deal. But it's not going to happen if you're laying there dead on the ground. So me personally, unless you're going to play Skyrim in such a way that you have unlimited skill points, I would strongly suggest just, with the limited skill points that you do have, if you're just playing within, a reasonable like level cap, say, between 60 and 70 or whatever, putting those points in specifically what you do, and that seems more RPG-ish to me, right? Anyway, if you'll notice here on the boots, all right, specifically for this build, I had planned on maybe putting magic resistance, but you couldn't. And then I thought, well, I'm having the most problem with cold damage, right? But then I had to think to myself, all right, I can do two things with my armor. I can make it offense or I can make it defense, right? And when I have a choice, might as well go with offense. So what I did is I went for stamina regen instead, and then enhancing my one-handed damage, okay? And then you notice with my headgear, I increased my magicka here because I haven't put any points into magicka. I want to be able to cast at least one conjuration spell, right? Hopefully a master level conjuration spell without having ever put a single point into magic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a magic buff in here to increase my magicka pool, which will also help with heals and stuff like that. It's nice to have, right? And increase my bow damage. If I'd have been allowed to increase bow and one-handed with my headpiece, I would have. I've already done that with my necklace and with my rings, okay? And so I put one-handed on my boots. Now I'm going to put bow on my helmet. And then with my gauntlets, I'm going to put bow and one-handed also. You see? All right, so everything, offense when available. And stick that with everything. So I've got this path that I'm going down, okay? I'm going to be a DPS berserker type thing, right? And rely on my followers to tank for me, all right? So I'm going to try to manage threat in the game. Threat means the person that the enemy is trying to kill. All right, which should be everyone but me type thing. And so we'll just roll like that. And if there's not an offensive option on my gear, well, that's fine. Then we'll go with defense because it is armor after all. But and notice on my armor, it doesn't give me an option for one-handed or archery upgrades. All right, but what it does give me an option for is to reduce the cost of my conjuration spells. So not only have I increased my magicka pool, but now I reduce the cost of my conjuration spells too. And if I can get my conjuration really high, like 70s, 80s, 90s, even 100, then even a master level spell might be manageable. I'm going to see when I get there. If I have to, I could put another magicka enchantment on something else. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But I think this may actually work. I may not be really worried about anything any higher than a Frost Atronach anyway, personally, but it is what it is. Now notice I put a light armor enchantment on that, but my light armor rating is not at 100 yet. It's only at 90. So I need to go train. So I did just level. I'm going to go find Nazir at the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary. I think he's the only one that can train you up to 100. Or maybe it's just 95. I don't know. We'll see. Whatever he can get me up to. But I'll go train with him when I can and try to get that to 100. Then I'll switch to that particular piece of gear. But as far as everything else, I'll go ahead and equip that. All right, so notice these are all right next to each other too, and that's really convenient, actually. Let's put those on the favorites list, and then when I want to switch weapons or I want to switch out of one and put a spell in the other real quick or something like that, I can do that really fast. All right, so between all my gear, my one-handed attacks should be doing 160 extra percent, and my bows should be doing 160 extra percent. That's between the gauntlets and the headpiece / boots. And then my ring and my necklace. They, all that together, it upgrades my archery 4 times, and it upgrades my one-handed 4 times. And that's the max extra damage I can get. So I treat my armor as an offensive thing. I'm not a tank. I'm a damage dealer, right? And that's my job. Now, true enough, I've got a lot of hindrances or handicaps as far as my gear goes. Using iron weapons, using just basic fur armor, basically, and all that. So this build... this particular logic here would be really, really effective with full dragon scale or dragon bone stuff, with full, dragon bone weapons and all that kind of stuff, or Daedric stuff, right? it would be even more effective with that. And that's without any exploits or glitches. You don't have to go do some restoration thing to give all of your stuff, you know, this ridiculous ratings and stuff to run around God mode. I can't see how that would be fun. That means people do it, so it must be fun, and well, more power to them. You know, it's their $60. Play with it how you want.
Dragons breathing fire in the sky? Vampires brazenly attacking people on the street? It's the end of the world, I tell you.
Yeah, right. Anyway, but with me, I like the challenge here, and I think using this stuff, it really requires some strategy with how you actually equip yourself and how you actually build your character to make it competitive, you know? And I think that's cool. Anyway, you notice with my stamina pool how many strings or how many series of power attacks I can get off, and then having that simple one buff where my stamina regenerates faster. You can see how quickly my stamina starts to regenerate from an empty pool and fills up. And I like that. And that's really good for a stamina-based build. And that's from having a huge stamina pool and being a high enough level to where it regenerates on its own, and then helping that a little bit with my gear. And so there you go. And that's a build there. And this equipment here will keep me through the rest of the game as I level up. All right? And we are going to wait till daytime so we can go sell some stuff. And I will catch back up with you guys. But that is kind of an offbeat sort of build video there, but some things to consider and think about. Hope it helped some. If nothing else, something to keep, think about. And if you want to subscribe, click that button up top, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.